While history remembers the 1920s for unprecedented prosperity, it was also a time of upheaval. 100 years later, and today's world tells a similar story of opportunity amid chaos, both at home and abroad, including emerging markets. From world-class tech companies to rising economic powerhouses like India and Brazil, what role do emerging markets play in this evolving story? We're going to break it all down for you right now on UBS Trending. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Anthony Pastore, and this is UBS Trending. I'm sitting in the studio with my colleague, Alejo Cherwanko, Chief Investment Officer for Emerging Markets here in UBS's CIO. Alejo, welcome.
Always great to be here.
Always great to be here with you as well. You know, we recently released our year-ahead report in CIO talking about the Roaring 20s. And people, of course, dip back to flappers and the 1920s and the economic prosperity from that decade, post-World War I and pre-Great Depression, of course. And you've drawn parallels, and we as a team have drawn parallels between today's economic environment and markets to the 1920s. So tell us where those converge, where they meet.
Absolutely. As you know, Anthony, history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And that's what we're trying to hit at here. 1920s, 2020s, you have both economic prosperity, good financial market performance, coupled with political tensions, geopolitical transformation. So it's an interesting juncture that we're living in. Look back 100 years, 1920s. You had strong economies, technological revolution. People were adopting cars, telephones, en masse, right, across the Western world. The financial markets reacted accordingly. You had very solid performance. But at the same time, you had the revival of the Ku Klux Klan in the United States, anti-immigration policies in the United States, transformations in the geopolitical map with the US going up, Europe coming down, and maybe as a result, totalitarian leaders coming to power in Europe, Mussolini in Italy, 1922, right? So I think a lot to compare when it comes to the 2020s. Since the year 2020, we've seen global stocks up 50%. U.S. nominal GDP up 30%. U.S. private sector profits up 70%. So terrific economic and financial market performance. But as you know as well, we've got polarization politically in the U.S. and many other countries in the world. And the global geopolitical map is being redrawn. There's new players, there's new tensions, and I think conflict between countries is here to stay.
You know, they always have said, and you see this in the history books, that history has a way of repeating itself. There are uncanny similarities between 100 years ago and today, and including the fact that at the start of 1920, there was just an end of the Spanish flu pandemic that hit the world, the whole globe. So again, it's very similar. A lot of similarities there. So in the emerging market space then, Alejo, and you know, we've sat here and had conversations about emerging countries like India and Brazil and the opportunities there, but there's a lot of tech that's also happening in these countries. We talk a lot about tech here on the developed world side with the Magnificent Seven and all the AI, but that's happening in India and Brazil and other EM countries as well. So where are you seeing the most compelling opportunities in that space?
That's right, Anthony. I think you got to remember that there are great opportunities and then some challenges from this environment that we are discussing. On the opportunity side, there's strong growth, not only in the United States, not only increasingly we think in China there's going to be stabilization of growth, but global economic activity is being supported by places such as India, where we see 7% year-over-year expansions of GDP.
Unbelievable.
And even Brazil, 3% year-over-year expansions of GDP. So that's one consideration. In addition, you discussed tech. A lot of the leaders in the artificial intelligence revolution are in the United States, but many are in emerging markets. Where do you find the largest producer in the world of chips? That's in Taiwan. The largest producer in the world of memory chips, that's in Korea, and many other examples, right? Finally, if you think about, and we've discussed this in prior episodes, the geopolitical map is not what it used to be 5 years ago. Now, countries that are sitting in between the United States and China can benefit from this reality, extract concessions from one side and from the other. And we go back to examples: India, Brazil, geopolitical swing states, quote unquote, that can thrive in this challenging world. Now, make no mistake, it's not an easy environment when it comes to trade and tariff uncertainty. That is not good for emerging markets. When it comes to fragmentation of the global markets for goods, services, capital, that is a headwind for emerging markets. So we've got pros and cons here.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback 1 second on the tariff, it's a question that I know that comes up a lot with our investors, our financial advisors, and we don't know yet what the Trump administration will do after the inauguration happens. But if tariffs do become this sort of flat blanket amount percentage-wise, it could really have an impact not only on emerging but on international markets as well.
Without a doubt.
Right.
If we do see blanket tariffs, anything that the U.S. imports from the rest of the world is affected, then this is going to be damaging for just about global risk assets in general, including U.S. stocks, right? I don't think there's many places to hide. We do not think that is a baseline scenario. We think there's going to be tariffs, but they're going to be more targeted. They're going to be more selective because of the economic damage and the financial damage that they would impose in an alternative scenario.
Right, and it's not like those types of risk scenarios are hidden from anyone who's sitting in Washington, D.C., or who's going to be joining the Trump administration. They're aware of the impact of blanket tariffs in history and on what it could potentially do to the U.S. and global economies.
Yeah, we think so.
Right, okay, good. So let's then take it more broadly, Alejo. So how does all of this, when you're talking about technology and what's emerging in these EM countries, how does that apply to investing in U.S. markets versus EM? I know we always recommend a diversified portfolio, so how does that play in?
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to remember that the performance of an investment is not just the function of how well a company or a country does in the future, but it's also very much dependent on what's priced in when you go into these markets, right? And it is crystal clear that U.S. assets, in particular U.S. stocks, there's a lot of good news already in the price. International assets, emerging market stocks, not that much good news, right? And so I think an analogy might be helpful. When you think about a family, 2 kids, very early on, you can already know, right? One kid is going to Harvard, getting a Nobel Prize in chemistry, right? The other kid, on the other hand, struggling. If this person finishes high school, you're lucky, right? What happens if the first kid doesn't end up getting to Harvard? You're going to be pretty disappointed.
That's right.
What happens if the second kid ends up finishing college somewhere? That's success.
Cause for celebration.
Exactly.
Right.
So this is how you should be thinking about the U.S., Harvard, Nobel Prize, emerging markets, maybe high school, right? And reality might transpire a little different from expectations. So you got to be ready. You got to have kids of all types.
So essentially, there is a possibility and a chance that emerging markets could perform well relative to
expectations.
That's expectations,
yes,
exactly.
Very much so.
Great.
I think it's, yeah.
Thanks, Alejo. That's great. That's a great analogy too, by the way. Something that I think resonates with parents out there. So, we've also got, high yield and geographic kind of diversification opportunities within the EM space. So how should investors approach this from allocations in their portfolio leaning to EM?
Absolutely. Thinking about where's the upside, right? It's not going to be in fixed income. It's most likely going to be in stocks. And here you've got, high growth markets and AI as drivers for emerging market stocks moving forward, something that might not play out 3 to 6 months out, but if you're patient, we think will pay off. When it comes to interest rates and carry, let's say, a very well-diversified basket of emerging market bonds offers yields of 6 to 7% in US dollars today. We think this is good, quote-unquote, risk-reward, and a very nice addition to global fixed income portfolios.
Great. Alejo, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk with you and see what's happening around the world. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Alejo Cherwanko from the Chief Investment Office. And thank you for joining us. There's lots more information on everything related to emerging markets as well as the rest of the markets coming out of our Chief Investment Office at our website, ubs.com/views. Plus, you can follow us on social media. We're on all the channels, including Instagram. Follow us at UBS Trending. Lots of content there for you to peruse and get access to. And as always, if you have any questions about what we talked about today, make sure you're chatting with your financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon.